Will the blacksmith was an evil man in life, so much so that when he died, he was immediately sent back by St. Peter and instructed him to lead a reformed life. But Will was a monster, and was even more vile in his second life. St. Peter was disgusted and cursed Will to roam the earth forever. The devil, however, was impressed by Will's evil and gave him an eternally burning coal to keep him warm through the cold nights. But instead, Will took the coal and made a torch, which he used to lure innocent travelers to their doom. From then on, nighttime travelers were told to beware of Will o' the Wisp. This is why witnesses see ghostly orbs of light at night, or at least that's how one story goes. Stories of these orbs can be found in many different cultures from all over the world and have inspired countless myths. Although some have a definite scientific explanation, others stump the scientific community despite recorded observation. Join me as we follow the light through the night on this Minisode of Snipe Hunt. We're back. You're listening to the latest Minisode of Snipe Hunt, your frightening folklore podcast, and I'm your host, Darren Young. On these minisodes, I cover topics that don't seem to quite have enough content to do a full episode on, and I try to go for a more serious tone than the full episodes. But of course, if the opportunity for a joke presents itself, I don't imagine that I will be able to resist. And as with all episodes, blatant mispronunciation is guaranteed. My regular co-host Gary will not be joining me for this minisode, but don't riot just yet, as he will be back on the next full episode. Now, one of the great things about these minisodes is that there is little to no housekeeping, so let's jump straight into tonight's subject. Tonight we will be discussing a phenomena of many names, these including Will-o'-the-Wisp, Jack-o'-the-Lantern, spook lights, ghost lights, orbs, hobby lanterns, ignis fatuus, friar's lantern, hinky punk, hobby lantern, luces del tesoro, fi follet, boitata, luz mala, la candeleja, halea, cirbati, hitodama, foxfire, arni volkea, fairy fire, pixie lights, spunky, men lights, naga fireballs, and more. I included all these names to show how diverse and seemingly common this phenomena is, and how these lights inspired all of these names, and the stories that were created to explain them. Now this is probably redundant at this point, but I will go ahead and provide a definition of the ghost lights. They are lights or fires that appear without an obvious cause. They are usually seen at night and can appear low to the ground or higher up in the sky. Some are stationary, but others move about. They are described in the scientific community as an atmospheric phenomenon, but as seen in folklore as spirits of the dead, the work of devils, the pranks of fairies, or even UFOs. These legends exist on nearly every continent except, of course, Antarctica, and interestingly, Africa. Let's take a look at a few of these myths. We have covered the legend of Will-o'-the-Wisp in the cold opening, so let's move on to Jack-o'-the-Lantern. This myth obviously inspired the tradition of jack-o'-lanterns on Halloween. This originated with the legend of Stingy Jack, and his story is similar to that of Will the blacksmith. Stingy Jack was a clever and tricky man who, like Will, led an evil life. Yet when the devil would come to take Jack's soul, Jack would trick the devil out of it. Jack trapped the devil in a tree by surrounding it with crucifixes, and made a deal that if the devil never took his soul, he would release him. The devil reluctantly took this deal. When Jack died, he could not enter heaven due to his sinful life, and could not enter hell due to his deal. Jack was given an ember by the devil to warn others of his mistakes. Jack is cursed to wander the plains between good and evil, illuminating his way with a turnip lantern, with the ember of the devil providing the light. The Irish would originally carve jack-o'-lanterns from turnips to ward off evil spirits and Stingy Jack himself. Upon immigrating to America, the Irish used pumpkins for jack-o'-lanterns instead, as they were much easier to carve. Other European folklore states that these ghost lights are fairy fire, made by a mischievous fairy called a puka. These puka will lead travelers off the path at night into the marsh and then extinguish their light, leaving the traveler lost. Alternatively, the pixie, another kind of fairy, will use its fairy fire to guide travelers safely through difficult terrain such as a bog or marsh. Some cultures assert that these lights are indicators to places where gold or other treasure is hidden, but can only be found with the help of children. This is the case in Mexico, where they are referred to as treasure lights. Treasure lights are also found in many parts of Europe, most notably the Arni Volkea in Finnish mythology. These are eternal flames that mark the locations of buried fairy gold that are magically hidden. The only way to find these spots, according to legend, is to find the seed of a flowering fern, and the magical seed will lead you to these locations. It should be noted that the fern plant neither flowers nor does it have seeds, so good luck. In some parts of Latin America, it is known as the luz mala, or evil light. This excerpt from sites.google.com/site/Latin American Myths and Legends explains. It is said that this light hovers and is made out of toxic gases and decomposed bones, which is fatal to a human. In the driest of seasons, it is said that the light is brilliant, and coming from it are wisps of light. Some men who have supposedly followed and survived have only found broken native pottery and human remains. It is said that this light makes a noise that screams of pain and terror. People also say that if the light falls at the foot of a hill, there lies treasure that only the bravest can find. Those who believe go and look for it. Brazilian mythology shares this view of ghost lights being dangerous, as they believe these lights are created by the gaze of a giant snake with blazing eyes known as the boitata. The name means fiery serpent, and because of its glowing eyes, it is unable to see during the day due to the light of the sun, but can see everything in the darkness of night. The boitata leaves its cave at night to prey on living creatures and only eat their eyes. The serpent collects the light from the eyes of its prey so that its own eyes can glow at night. Other cultures also believe these lights are evil creatures, such as the Sequoiant, or Fireball Witch, in Caribbean folklore, who by day is a reclusive old woman, but sheds her disguise at night and transforms into a fireball. As a fireball, the Sequoiant flies around in search of prey, and can enter homes through small openings and suck the blood of its victims. Still others believe that these orbs of light are spirits left wandering the earth. People who take flash pictures outdoors at night will often see what looks to be orbs of light in their pictures. Many paranormal enthusiasts will believe that these orbs are spirits and are photographic proof of ghosts. Unfortunately, this is not the case, as the light from the flash of the camera will reflect off a multitude of things, primarily dust particles and even insects, which shows up in the picture as orbs of light. This is probably the easiest to disprove of all alleged paranormal phenomena, but before we get too deep into natural explanations, let's look at other cases of ghost light phenomena. Flying orbs of light were reported by World War II pilots on a regular basis. The pilots called these orbs Foo Fighters, not to be confused with the popular rock band of the same name. Now the term Foo Fighters referred to just about any kind of UFO phenomena as seen by pilots of the time, and Foo Fighters themselves may get their own dedicated episode. But for this minisode, we are concerned with the Foo Fighters that took the form of lights in the sky. This excerpt from the December 14th, 1944 edition of the Twin Falls Telegram newspaper reports on these lights. Title: Secret Weapon Resembles Yule Decoration. The Germans on the Western Front have produced a secret weapon in keeping with the Christmas season. It was disclosed officially Wednesday. The new device, apparently an air defense weapon, resembles the huge glass balls which adorn Christmas trees. They hang in the air, sometimes singly, sometimes in clusters. They are colored silver, and their other shades are apparently transparent. No information was available what holds them up like stars in the sky, what's in them, or to their purpose. Lately they have been seen several times floating over German territory. The following excerpt from a historical and physiological perspective of the Foo Fighters in World War II catchy name, by Jeffrey A. Lindell describes more sightings. Early in October of 1944, British, Canadian, and American night fighters and bomber crews began to report strange, intelligently controlled balls of light, and jets, operating in various formations and conducting rather spectacular maneuvers over the night skies of Belgium, Holland, and Western Germany. Later, in February of 1945, American and British night fighters also began to report encounters with, quote, balls of light and, quote, jets over the Po Valley of northern Italy. From early April until late May of 1945, hundreds of sightings of these mysterious balls of light were made by bomber crews of the 20th Air Force over the night skies of Japan. The Army Air Force Intelligence Services were also perplexed by the mass sightings of this nature. General Henry Hughlin, commander of the 9th Bomb Group, 20th Air Force, who had served under General Curtis LeMay in the 20th Air Force and later at the Headquarters Strategic Air Command in the 1950s, had asked General LeMay after the war was over if he had ever found out what those balls of light were. General LeMay reportedly professed ignorance. Now, these Foo Fighters are much different than what we've been talking about up till now. The light orbs we discussed before in various mythologies were all witnessed as being close to the ground, whereas these Foo Fighters are high up in the sky and seem to move at a much faster speed. Many UFO sightings, even today, match the description of these Foo Fighters. Now, some ghost-like phenomena can be observed on a somewhat frequent basis in some locations. The first one I want to bring up is the Gurdon Light in my home state of Arkansas. This light can be seen near a deserted stretch of railroad tracks near the town of Gurdon in Clark County. This light can vary in color, but is mostly described as a bluish-green light and is sometimes even seen bobbing up and down. According to local folklore, a railroad worker was killed near the tracks in the early 1930s. This legend can actually be connected to a real-life event, as described on Arkansas.com. Many trace the Gurdon Light legend to a murder that took place near the railroad tracks in December of 1931. William McLean, a foreman with the Missouri Pacific Railroad, was involved in an argument with one of his employees, Lewis McBride, regarding how many days McBride was being allowed to work. During the Depression, the company did not have the option of giving McBride more hours on the job. McBride became very angry, hit McLean on the head with a shovel, and beat him to death with a railroad spike maul or a spike hammer. The Gurdon Light was first sighted a short time after this murder, and many have come to believe that the light is actually McLean's ghostly lantern glowing in the night. Crossett, Arkansas also has a ghost light which, according to local legend, is also a result of the death of a railroad worker. Now, probably the most famous instance of ghost light phenomena are the lights of Brown Mountain, located on the border of Burke and Caldwell counties in western North Carolina. Recorded sightings of these mysterious lights that float above the ridge of Brown Mountain date back to more than a century, but some claim that the lights have been around for even longer. These floating lights are strange as they vary in color and size and move in unpredictable patterns above the mountain. They are often seen in groups, and in some cases, one large orb will break off into smaller balls of light, only to regroup once again in a spectacular yet perplexing display. On average, each orb will appear for 10 seconds before blinking out, but some will last for more than a minute. Local legends state that these lights are the ancestor spirits of Native Americans who died in battle in the area, and according to the North Carolina Museum of History, another legend dates back to 1850, in which a woman named Belinda disappeared in the Brown Mountain area, and her husband Jim was suspected of murdering her. Everyone in the community helped search for Belinda. One night during the search, strange lights appeared over Brown Mountain. Many believe they were the spirit of the dead woman, coming back to haunt her killer. The search ended without Belinda being found, and Jim soon left the county, never to be heard from again. Many years later, under a pile of stones in a deep ravine on Brown Mountain, a woman's skeleton was found, and the lights that had been seen during the search started to appear again, and they have been seen ever since, reminding evildoers that their crimes will be revealed. The Brown Mountain lights are unique in the ghost light phenomena in that they have been observed more than any other by the scientific community. There are, in fact, multiple images and videos of the lights available online. In 1913, a U.S. Geological Survey concluded that the lights were caused by the reflection of train headlights on local rail bridges. But when a 1916 flood caused the local railways to close for several weeks, the lights were still seen. In 1922, the U.S. Geological Society investigated the lights, and George Mansfield concluded that the lights were ignited by swamp gas. But the issue with this explanation is that there are no marshes nor swamps near the mountain. More on swamp gas later. In 1940, Hobart A. Whiteman analyzed the rocks and soil in the area but was unable to find anything unusual. In 1977, the Oak Ridge Isochronous Observation Network, or Orion, placed an artificial light on the mountain in a test to see if their artificial light could be seen from an overlook on Route 181, a prime spot for viewing the Brown Mountain lights. Observers could in fact see Orion's light, so they concluded that the phenomena was caused by artificial lights or the reflection of artificial lights on the mountain. But this did not explain the recorded sightings that occurred before the invention of electricity. In response to this, Orion conducted another experiment to recreate the lights through seismic activity, but were unable to achieve any results. And finally, a 15-year-long study of the Brown Mountain lights was conducted by the League of Energy Materialization and Unexplained Phenomena Research, or LEMUR. The study was very thorough and detailed and can be found online. I will not go over the entirety of the study for time's sake, but I will talk about the conclusions as stated in the LEMUR report. Quote, "There are 3 known sighted vantage points for seeing the lights, the most famous being Wiseman's View, about 8 miles west of Brown Mountain. Then there is Lost Cove, about 9 miles from the northwest as the aforementioned mountain. In the middle of these 2 points is an overlook, about 4 miles from the Brown Mountain, maintained by the Forest Service. From this lookout point, you can see the Brown Mountain is barely more than a smoky-looking dark spot in the rolling hills. The lights appear in the areas above and between Brown Mountain, but not on Brown Mountain itself. Remember that if you try to climb Brown Mountain to look for them, the lights vanish. This indicates and confirms that the lights are not emanating from the mountain, but rather around it. Most modern video footage of the lights seem to come from people pointing cameras at the mountain itself. The mountain is a popular tourist spot, and these lights could simply be flashlights or campfires. Depending on the direction you look for the lights could be lost in the glare of the city lights from Winston-Salem. The true lights will always be above the mountain ridge lines and will be hovering and free moving. Despite all the scientific study and all the local legends, we still do not know what the Brown Mountain lights are. I feel at this point the best conclusion has already been reached by a combination of the Orion research and the LEMUR study project, and that most of the lights are simply the reflection of city and car lights, while the rare true light is as of yet unexplained natural high energy plasma event that, if studied and understood, would have far-reaching applications from weapons science to wireless communications. Right now our country and sciences are focused on space and the oceans, other planets. Perhaps we should revisit some of our own hometown mysteries, as we may yet find that we have more than we bargained for in our own backyards. So despite all the observations and studies of the Brown Mountain lights, they remained unexplained. So where does this leave us as far as natural explanations for ghost lights, or as it's known in the scientific circles, ignis fatuus in general? The most popular explanation is, of course, swamp gas. This states that the lights are being caused by the oxidation of phosphine, diphosphane, and methane, as these compounds are produced by organic decay and can ignite to create light emissions. Mixtures of phosphine and diphosphane can spontaneously ignite when exposed to oxygen, and this ignition can cause the methane gas around the mixture to also ignite, which can result in a natural occurrence of ignis fatuus. Swamp gas flames have been recreated in laboratory conditions, but it produced a green flame and produced foul-smelling smoke, neither of which have been reported in sightings of will-o-wisp phenomena. British geologist Alan A. Mills suggested that ignis fatuus might actually be cold flames, which are blue in color and release very little heat and smoke, but there are no confirmations that cold flames occur naturally. In 2008, Italian chemists Luigi Garcelli and Paolo Bocchetti tested to see if chemiluminescence, the emission of light due to a chemical reaction, of phosphine was due to blame, and they were able to create a green light in the experiments as opposed to the blue or even red light of Ignis Fatuus, but they concluded that the human eye cannot easily distinguish color in low light conditions. In 1993, it was proposed that these ghost lights would be caused by piezoelectricity, which is electric charge generated by certain solid materials such as crystals, ceramics, or bones, as a result of pressure and heat. This piezoelectricity could be caused by tectonic strain and travel to the surface via a column of vapor or water and appear as light. This theory would explain why some ghost lights appear electrical and erratic in behavior. Another theory states that Ignis Fatuus could be caused by the misidentification of a bioluminescent species of flora and fauna, such as the light caused by certain funguses or even fireflies. In fact, the bluish-green bioluminescence of a certain fungi is referred to as foxfire, fairy fire, or my personal favorite, chimpanzee fire. Similar to this is the theory that some of these lights are caused by the eyeshine of animals. But none of these explain the Brown Mountain lights nor Foo Fighters. While we mentioned earlier that the Brown Mountain lights are unexplainable, there are some natural theories of Foo Fighters. One of them being cases of St. Elmo's fire, which is an interesting weather phenomenon in which luminous plasma is created by a discharge from a pointed object in a strong electric field in the atmosphere, usually in a thunderstorm. This discharge can appear on the tops of rods of a ship masts, or in the case of Foo Fighters, on the tips of the wings of an aircraft. For some bonus trivia, here is an excerpt from the Wikipedia article. St. Elmo's fire is named after St. Erasmus of Formia, also called St. Elmo, one of the two Italian names for St. Erasmus, the other being St. Erasmo, the patron saint of sailors. The phenomenon sometimes appeared on ships at sea during thunderstorms, and was regarded by sailors with religious awe for its glowing ball of light, accounting for the same. Sailors may have considered St. Elmo's fire as a good omen, as a sign of the presence of their patron saint. Then our final explanation of ghost lights is ball lightning. Ball lightning is a very rare and very unpredictable phenomenon in which glowing electric orbs, which can range in both size and color, form during a strong atmospheric electric field, like a thunderstorm, and can travel a distance before disappearing. Sometimes a hissing sound and a foul odor accompany these instances. Until recently, ball lightning was considered nothing more than folklore, but is now considered by most scientists to be a true natural phenomenon, and instances of both laboratory-created ball lightning and natural ball lightning have been recorded. Although due to the rareness and unpredictable nature of these occurrences, there is actually very little scientific data on the subject. In fact, Joseph Peer and Alexander Kendall at the University of Innsbruck in Austria found that about half of all ball lightning sightings may just be hallucinations caused by the magnetic stimulation of the brain's visual cortex or the eye's retina, the magnetic stimulation being caused by the strong electrical fields generated by thunderstorms. Ball lightning, or the hallucinations of it, might very well explain many ghost light accounts. More fringe explanations of Foo Fighters include everything from secret Nazi weapons to alien craft. And that wraps up this minisode. I hope you're not as tired of hearing the word light as I am saying it. There are plenty other examples of this phenomena that I didn't go over, but that's because if I did, this would get very repetitive. But it was still very interesting to research. If you like the podcast, leave a rating and tell your friends about us. We are a small podcast that is really trying to grow. After all, the more, the merrier. Let them know that you can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, and YouTube. If you have a question, comment, suggestion for a future episode, or a story of something you have experienced, please contact us on social media or email us at snipehuntpodcast@gmail.com. You can also vote for a topic on our poll on patreon.com/snipehunt. Big shout out to my co-host Gary. You of course are awesome, and I will see you on the next full episode. From Will-o'-the-Wisps to Foo Fighters to ball lightning, it seems there are many strange lights out there, some explainable, while others not so much. The Will-o'-the-Wisp phenomenon, aka Ignis Fatuus, is being reported less and less in modern day. This may be due to the march of civilization reclaiming swamplands and marshes, or maybe we just aren't paying attention. Either way, I think we were able to shed some light on this frightening folklore.
Once again, we want to thank you for listening to Snipe Hunt. Your listening has been noted and will be reported to the proper authorities. All audio used was done so under the protection of fair use.
Logo design is by Ethan Rothfuss. The music used for this episode was composed by Mayu and Nature World 1986. We'll continue to search for the unexplained and will hopefully see you on the next hunt.